Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, Executive Editor at ClassicsToday.com. And we're beginning year 3 of this channel with this video, which is actually the end of the year 2 series of 7 videos that I did just for fun, for my anniversary. And I wanted to just end it on a high note and tell you about 3 atrocious live concerts that I've attended in my lifetime. I mean, I've seen bazillions of them, and there will be other talks. Maybe we can make this an annual feature or something like that. But the reason I wanted to talk to you about it is because I really wanted to stress that, when we're having these conversations back and forth about various performances, and we talk about a bunch of recordings, and then somebody chimes in with, oh, I saw so-and-so conduct such and such, and they were fabulous. Recently, I've seen talks about that with what's his name? Klaus Mikela, whose Sibelius sucked beyond belief, his recorded cycle with Oslo. And a bunch of nasty people cursed me out. I mean, really cursed me out. I deleted them, but they were quite mean and hostile. And they said, well, I just saw him conduct blah, and it was amazing. And I saw him do whoop, and it was fabulous. Well, he may do a fabulous whoop. I mean, whoops are easy to do fabulously. They might have. But I was reviewing a set of Sibelius symphonies, which everybody can hear for themselves how dreadful they are. So, it's not the same thing, number one. And number two, I really don't care what anybody thinks about a live concert because it's not a repeatable quantity. And unless all of us can hear it and all of us can have a discussion about it and make up our minds and decide for ourselves how good or how bad it was, your opinion means nothing. Certainly nothing to me. And I assume that my opinion of these dreadful concerts will mean nothing to you. It just hopefully will be fun to hear me talk about them. But a little squib that says, oh, so-and-so conducted this and I was there and it was amazing. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, come on. We're here to talk about music. Let's talk about music. So I'm saying this just to sort of summarize our whole raison d'etre. Certainly if you went to see a live concert that thrilled you and you want to tell us about it, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. But it's not evidence, is what I'm saying. You get it? It's not evidence. And that brings up the last point before I get to these 3 concerts, which is that going to see a live symphony concert, I think, is a thrilling experience, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, it really is. I mean, the symphony orchestra is one of the most amazing creations in the history of humanity. It's just the ultimate cultural output of a whole civilization, and in a good sense. I mean, it's just a brilliant, amazing organism. And so to go see a concert and to thrill with the sound of it as it washes over you, oh my God, what could be more glorious than that? Really. I mean, even concerts that I sucked, even the ones I'm going to tell you that I sucked, I didn't suck them, that I'm going to tell you about them. I had a good time. Everybody has a good time. That's why reviewing live concerts is so frustrating for me, and I so seldom do it anymore, because basically it's always going to get a standing ovation most of the time anyway. Only in opera happily, because some opera people are crazy, well, you occasionally get someone booing or throwing Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. It still happens once in a while. But for symphony concerts, everybody sits there like this and deathly quiet. And then when it's over, they all go, ah! And it's clap like crazy. And it could have been atrocious. But who am I to say that they shouldn't have had a good time? I had a good time. Every miserable moment, I had a good time. I mean, it's fun. It's great to listen to. And that's just the way it is. So to tell somebody later that it really stank, and it's not a repeatable experience, what good does it do? They've already spent their money. That's why it's so much more rewarding for me to review recordings, because then I can say, wait, don't spend it here, spend it there. So that's just my thinking going into this. So I'm going to tell you about 3 concerts. One of them is one of the most amusingly entertaining, was the Abbado Mahler Fifth with the Berlin Philharmonic. And some of you, I'm sure, were with me at Carnegie Hall for that concert. This was the concert where the principal trumpeter blew his opening solo. Now, for those of you who don't know Mahler Fifth, it begins all by itself with a trumpet solo that goes da-da-da-da, da 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 da. Da 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 da. And it gets higher and higher and higher, and you're all alone. And if you blow it, it was so demoralizing for the entire orchestra. Literally, the performance never recovered. First of all, I mean, it's the Berlin Philharmonic, right? So everybody thinks, the Berlin Philharmonic. And it's Claudio Abbado, who was such a micromanager, perfectionist kind of guy. And then he cracked more than once. You know, it was da 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 eek, do 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 do, da 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 eek, like that. I mean, it was amazing. Everybody gasped. And when 2,786 and a half people all gasp at the same time, I swear to God, the oxygen just got sucked out of the room. It was amazing. I don't think there was any oxygen left for the rest of the wind and brass section to play the ensuing, big, powerful thing. Anyway, the whole performance after that just sucked. I mean, there were mistakes galore. First of all, it was all taken down a notch. All of the tension, all of the excitement, they all knew that from that point on, nothing that they did would have made any difference in the general impression that performance made, which is actually a pity because there are many other moments when they could have redeemed themselves and tried to efface the memory of that appalling opening. And some people, I would say, would probably try harder after something dreadful like that happens, something embarrassing, but they didn't. They weren't interested in doing it at all. And so the whole thing was just a snooze fest. And boy, oh boy, was that a shocker. We were talking about it for months afterwards with the most marvelously delectable edge of schadenfreude to our voices. Because, when a great orchestra like that, and they are a great orchestra, really screws up, and they really did, and not just the trumpets after that, it's kind of it's a thing. It's a very amusing thing, I have to say. So I had a great time at that concert, but was it bad? It was bad. It was so embarrassing, and it wasn't the worst that I've seen from Abbado, but we'll save that one for another moment. So next, let's talk about another one. Simon Rattle and the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra. Oh boy. Not only, they had been getting crazy positive reviews in Gramophone for years, and this was driving English orchestral life nuts. Why? Because players in the UK spend their lives trying to get into the London pool of players who are supposed to be the best in the country and to get into one of the major London orchestras. And these orchestras were, they were British. So yeah, they got their pats on the head from the establishment. But then Rattle in the City of Birmingham would blow into the UK and everybody would just have an orgasm and roll over and drop dead. And it was just ridiculous. Ridiculous. And they were making all these recordings that just sucked. And nobody was admitting it over on that side of the pond. So they came to New York. They gave a bunch of concerts, and I saw a couple of them. And I'm going to tell you about one because there are others that we could talk about later. It consisted of Nielsen's Third Symphony and Ravel's Complete Daphnis and Chloe, with the chorus parts left out. Can you imagine such a thing? If you're going to do a complete Daphnis and Chloe, you must use the chorus. If you are not going to use the chorus, do one of the suites and do something else, But no, this was supposed to show off what the orchestra could do. And Rattle had no idea how to make a decent program. It was a horrible program. I mean, Nielsen and Ravel together like that, two big, beefy second half works slammed together just like that. It was a terrible idea. I mean, it was like, well, let me tell you, I was a line chef, a line cook for years and years when I was in high school and college to make, some extra money. And one of the things that I made when I was on weekends when I worked at this restaurant in Milford, Connecticut called Lum's at the time. It was a hot dog place originally, but it sold the full line of, steaks and burgers and fried stuff and all that stuff. And on the weekends, I would often work when other people didn't feel like it because I enjoyed it. And I had my weekend specials. And that was what I would do is I would take some completely incompatible bunch of ingredients and put them together just to see if someone would order them as a joke. And one of my weekend specials was something called liver mint surprise. This was fried liver and onions with a microwave melted batch of York peppermint patties, which are, chocolate covered mint things, poured on top of the fried liver and onions. And one day someone actually ordered it, and I was shocked beyond belief. I mean, it was just my concept of the most awful thing I could possibly put together in terms of incompatible flavors. Well, that's Ravel and Nielsen on this same program. They just don't go. And when you're done hearing one, when you're done hearing Nielsen's Espansiva, even after intermission, do you really feel up to an entire Daphnis and Chloe? Or vice versa? I mean, it was just ridiculous programming. So that was the first problem. The second problem was that in the second movement, in the Nielsen, we had Mrs. Simon Rattle, Elise Ross, singing the wordless vocalese, which is only like 2 minutes of music and a few lines. That's all it is. You're just going, like that, right? How can you blow that? Well, I found out how you can blow that. Oh, it was just horrible. And whoever the guy was, I don't even remember. You couldn't hear him because it's a baritone and a soprano doing this pastoral wordless vocalese. It was horrendous. The whole performance was so lumpish and so unaware and so under-rehearsed. And it just sounded like an amateur, well, it was an amateur effort. And then, of course, we had Daphnis and Chloe without the chorus. And I got about halfway through it before I just got up and left. And I never leave. I can count the number of times I walked out of a concert on, the fingers of one hand. I very seldom leave. But I was so disgusted by the playing, by the concept, by the programming. Everything about it was just wretched. Absolutely wretched. But I had a good time walking out. I did. It was fun. I felt completely justified and self-righteous. And, oh, yeah, I had my back up. Now I probably just would have taken a nap and left when it was over. But there you go. I was young and I was impetuous, and so I left. And finally, last but not least, for one of just the dullest concerts I've ever sat through, it was horrible beyond belief, was Bernard Heiting in the Concertgebouw, who actually, presented several atrociously boring concerts in my lifetime. But it consisted of Dawn on the Moskva River by, Mussorgsky, the Prelude to Khovanshchevo, which was very pretty. And then they did Shostakovich's Sixth, which was okay. It was very good. I don't think Heiting's Shostakovich Sixth is anything special in his recordings, because he doesn't have a lot to say about it. He's just his usual sort of dour, straightforward kind of self. But the orchestra is marvelous, and it comes to a wonderful ending. But then for the second half of the program, he all by itself was Schumann's Second Symphony. Now, do not get me wrong. Schumann's Second Symphony is a gorgeous piece of music, and I enjoy it very, very much. But if you're going to have a concert, the reason it was on the second half, let me put it to you this way, is that there is a prejudice. It's a horrible prejudice in our classical music world, which says that the German classic work is the most important, and therefore it should always be all by itself on the second half, no matter what. And because it's just more important. I mean, Kurt Masur was big at doing that stuff when he was at the New York Philharmonic. I mean, his idea of daring, adventuresome programming was the Franck D minor on the first half and the Brahms Second Symphony on the second half. Ugh. Talk about, this artery clogging evening. But that's the prejudice, and so you put the German thing second as the highlight because it's superior and more lofty. And I think that is so freaking stupid. I think you should put whatever's loudest on the second half to end the concert. I mean, it's an event. You have to have an event mentality. Heiting had no event mentality. And one of the things that really, really pissed me off is that if you have a work like the Shostakovich, which has a really fun, rousing ending and uses a much larger orchestra than the Schumann, with percussion and all that slamming and banging, to make something really rousing at the end, you don't do it, get it out of the way so that you can play the not terribly well orchestrated, far more subdued, earlier German thing on the second half. And I have to say, in that context, the Schumann sounded absolutely primitive and somehow unfinished and uninteresting. And it was only made worse by the fact that Heiting's Schumann was never anything exciting. He was just a time beater in Schumann. And that symphony can be glorious. I mean, it can blaze. I mean, the best performances do. They really do. And I suspect that had he been able to raise it to the level of Shostakovich's Sixth, it would have been a marvelous second half. But as it was one of the dullest things I've ever seen. I was literally, pinching and twitching and doing, biting my tongue, doing everything I could to try to stay awake through it. It sounded about 50 times longer than it actually was. It's not a terribly long symphony. Well, it's his biggest. Well, maybe the Rhenish is a little longer, but it's like 30, 35 minutes. It's not hard to get through. But that was a terrible, terrible programming decision. And it made for a terrible, terrible, really terrible concert. And, so those are just three. And I wanted to just throw it out there because also, in addition to the other business about the difference between live concerts and recordings, one of the things that I often hear is, if I praise a recording, well, so-and-so did a better live concert, and here's a live one over here. There's a recording of that. Well, no. They were just as likely to do it worse in a live circumstance. We've heard all about conductors who needed an audience, and we tend to think that they're somehow better because a live event in front of a real audience is somehow more authentic than the sterile mechanical recording thing. And I don't believe any of that. The only thing that matters is the evidence of our ears, what we hear. And it may be better, and it may not be better. You never know. But these are three concerts where the evidence of my ears was telling me that, boy, did I get ripped off by buying those tickets, because these were not concerts I reviewed. These were concerts that I paid for because I prefer to actually have a better time when I'm not working. I have a better time when I'm not working professionally to review these things. I went for myself to have a good time with my friends, and I was offended by what came out of those people. And I'm sure you have some of yours too. If you want to tell me about them, let's have some fun. Please feel free to contribute your own most vile concert experience. I'd be delighted to see what it was. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to our third year together and many more after that. Take care.